Hi, I'm David Schatz, Senior Vice President of Operations at Riot. Today, we're out at our 265-acre Corsicana facility, which sits just an hour south of Dallas. Once complete, this will be the largest Bitcoin mining facility in the world by developed capacity. Buildings A1 and A2 are now complete. Building B1 is nearing completion and will be operational by the end of September. Our current deployed hash rate is 7.6 exahash with just over 45,000 miners running. Building B2, our final 100 megawatt building in phase 1, which will give us a total of 400 megawatts, is now underway. Teams are working around the clock to get this infrastructure deployed to get this building up and online. Currently, we've hired over 150 full-time Riot team members that are working on site, and we have over 200 contractors working on the ground. Here we are at a retention pond, which we like to refer to as Lake Riot. This 17.8-acre pond holds 120 million gallons of water. It captures all of our stormwater runoff. We then filter it and recycle it to use it for cooling for our adiabatic systems for our mining operations.
You've articulated many times recently about the Riot's decision to stay within Bitcoin mining and not venture into the HPC space. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're going to, or what your strategy is to become the world's largest pure Bitcoin miner?
Sure. So I always tell people Riot is a Bitcoin company. We're here because of Bitcoin. We're here because of the massive opportunity we see with the adoption of Bitcoin as an investment class. I think what we're seeing this year with the approval and the massive inflows into these ETFs is a great data point to where this industry is moving. In fact, we have presidential candidates now saying that they support Bitcoin and they want the United States to be the leader in Bitcoin. We want to be positioned around this. We believe that the access to power that we have is a valuable commodity, and we want to use as much of that towards Bitcoin mining as we possibly can. And the reason for that is Riot has demonstrated through its power strategy a very low cost per Bitcoin on an energy basis. And what we've done here is built up this company. We've built up this pipeline, the infrastructure, both human resources and the physical resources that we have to replicate that advantage, that energy cost per Bitcoin over the widest possible scale. So putting the proven results of our power strategy to work and using all the electrical capacity that we can get towards mining Bitcoin, effectively buying Bitcoin at a discount to the market price. And by being an efficient operator like that, we think we are going to have the ideal financial returns that we're looking for over the long term. I understand there's a lot of interest around HPC and AI right now, and there are companies in our space that have struck very interesting and admirable deals. Thinking specifically, everyone's talking about Core Scientific. I think what they've done is very interesting and admirable. That is their strategy. We are narrowing in on this Bitcoin focus. We think this is a business that we want to specialize in. Our end of year goal is 36 exahash. The growth does not stop there. There's initiatives going on, like I said, at all sites still. So that's where we're aiming to be at that point of time. And then the work continues over into 2025 then. There's no break here, but yeah, a lot of growth on the horizon.
That's a good point. And with you mention about when we've seen those pictures today on the update and looking at building B2, the fabric being completed, that obviously leads you then to think about the rest of the site there, where you've got 600 megawatts of available capacity to grow out for your next year's targets. When we spoke in June, and we were there with a number of the Wall Street analysts down at the site to see Corsicana and its greatness, you basically said straight away at the start of the questions that HPC wasn't on the agenda at all for Riot Platforms. At that point in time, there was probably about 4 or 5 miners that were using the same strategy. They're going to be pure play miners. That number's dwindled down to 2 now. There's just yourselves and CleanSpark. And I'm just wondering, in the last 4 months, has Riot sat down and thought about, maybe if the opportunity was to come across, Marathon and Bitfarms have already hired people with a sort of like HPC background. They're looking at doing something in that space. And they were saying the same as you a similar period ago when we had them on the podcast. Are you still pure play, or actually, and I'm not saying, the CoreWeave, but if a CoreWeave deal came your way and said, look, you've got 600 megawatts there, you haven't started building, building C1 and C2, etc. Would you consider utilizing that power for this amazing contract that will deliver you, I don't know, $10 billion over the next 12 years? Would that change your mind, or do you think, actually, no, we're still in the Bitcoin mining game, one of the best in that?
Sure. So our plan, our focus remains on building the world's leading driven Bitcoin infrastructure platform. That's what we've kind of stated is our vision. And that is our vision because we want to be positioned for success alongside greater Bitcoin adoption here. Now, to achieve that, we've adopted a vertically integrated strategy. And that dates back 4 years now when we first started looking at, Bitcoin was $12,000, $14,000 a coin in 2020 at this point. And we were looking at building a portfolio of power assets so we would control our critical input to building infrastructure. The result of this vertically integrated strategy is probably the industry's strongest portfolio of grid-connected assets. This includes Kentucky, this includes Rockdale, and really, as we've spent a lot of time discussing, our crown jewel site in Corsicana that has a 1 gigawatt interconnect. Our strategy has always been to optimize the optionality of this power portfolio. So that historically has always been Bitcoin mining. And as we see it in the forefront right now, that continues to be Bitcoin mining. If the right deal comes across, especially with a deal like the Core Scientific CoreWeave deal, of course we would seriously consider that. That is a very attractive deal. I think the market has a lot of excitement around this because they're trying to see if a deal like that can be replicated. Can it be replicated? We once again have yet to see. If it can, we believe that Riot, with its additional 600 megawatts at Corsicana, is extremely well positioned to be in that market. So I think the market realizes that because we have recently started to begin receiving inbound interest around this capacity, and those are conversations that we've had. The ethos of Riot, and this pertains to our growth as well, is we kind of do it and then we share it. I don't like the idea of misleading anyone, making any false promises. Hey, we're pivoting to AI HPC. Hey, we have this capacity. We're hiring a whole team and all of this. And that doesn't end up materializing. We haven't seen this fully take off yet. Like I said, we have received inbound interest. Obviously, the value of our assets has been recognized, and there have been conversations around that. And if the right deal comes through, especially like the CoreWeave and Core Scientific deal, we're going to take a look at that. But we're always going to be very cautious about how we talk about this and not lead anyone to believe, hey, we have this deal like this coming down and we believe we're going to get this, unless and until something more concrete is in place.
That's good to hear, because I think the answer that you gave in June was absolutely not, and now it's sort of like a case of we're not proactively going to, but if the right deal came across, we'd be stupid to sort of to look the other way.
Well,
And
I
say,
think
okay.
over time we've expressed a skepticism that we'll for sure see a deal like that replicated.
Yeah.
And, that was a few months ago, and we've still yet to see a similar deal come
I
through.
think
So
you're absolutely right.
I think
We need that second deal, don't we? Yeah.
Core nailed a good deal, and maybe someone comes out with something that's very good, but not as good as that, and we kind of see the market moving along. Like I said, we want to be cautious about how we message about this. We believe our portfolio of power assets are incredibly valuable. What we have seen as the best way to monetize that has been Bitcoin mining, and our growth plans are all around Bitcoin mining. But of course, if the right deal comes through, if that does happen to materials with the right economics, yeah, you can bet we're going to seriously, consider that and work that into our plan in order to achieve our broader strategic vision.
Another one we've asked a few times. So when we were down at the facility, the number one question first asked by the analyst community was, will you be getting into HPC? You said no. At this point, we're not interested. Last podcast, you said, hey, you know what? We've got a lot of power at Corsicana. We're obviously open to hearing options, and our phone's actually been ringing more recently. So we wanted to get an update on that discussion. Is the phone still ringing? Has there been any other step on the HPC journey?
Yeah, there has been interest. The difference between our most recent conversation and back in, I believe it was June when you guys came out to Corsicana. Back then we had not received interest. We had not received inbounds, despite having pretty, I think, well-known pipeline of power available that we were developing there. And what changed for us is we did start receiving inquiries more recently, and these are discussions that we've had. For us, the quality of the counterparty is extremely important. If we were to do a deal like this, it would have to be someone that we're certain can finance their growth and is going to be able to honor that contract for many years. These are very long-term agreements, right? So you want to make sure that they're going to be able to satisfy those obligations for a long period of time. So getting inquiries from very high-quality counterparties, therefore kind of opened us up to having these conversations and seeing if there's something here that works. Like we've talked about before, the CoreWeave Core Scientific deal was a landmark one in this industry, and that is what has, I think, driven a lot of this excitement around Bitcoin miners doing something like AI HPC hosting to get a similar type of deal. We've not seen another deal like that struck in the industry yet, but these conversations are ongoing. At the end of the day, we think the power capacity that we have is valuable, and we will monetize that in the way that's in the best interest of shareholders. For us, that clearest path has been on Bitcoin mining, as we've seen it so far. But if the right deal comes together as a result of these conversations, then we have the ability to utilize that power in another way. I think the key thing for us is this vertically integrated strategy and continuing to acquire more pipelines of large capacity of power. Because, I can tell you from the conversations that we have, it's very high quantities of power that are of interest and on a timely basis. These large players, they're looking for hundreds of megawatts, not tens of megawatts. So, this is still very early on. I don't know what will happen of it, but I'm happy that our pipeline is being recognized and these counterparties are interested in having conversations with us, and we'll see what happens.
In terms of Corsicana, because we already alluded to earlier in the conversation that looks like you're preparing for the next, you call it C1, C2, D1, D2 buildings, which would take up another effectively 40% of your power. Is there a point in time where actually we've too far down the Bitcoin mining now to sort of like to change mind, or do you think you've still got enough time? And actually, you've highlighted that one big deal with Core Scientific is the only big deal out there. A couple of points from that is it likely we'll see another deal, or are we just? Do you think we're just being a bit impatient that deal's come ahead and we expect every other deal to start falling out the woodwork in the next few weeks, when really these hyperscalers are not looking this year, they're looking 2, 3, 4 years ahead of themselves?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think these are really big deals that are being talked about here. Significant amounts of capital being deployed. So it's not surprising that discussions, I think, take a longer period of time than maybe people would like. I think this phenomenon really has kicked off. I mean, what Core Scientific and CoreWeave signed their deal in March of this year, I believe.
The
So
first deal for 20, yeah, for 20
right,
megawatts, yeah.
yeah, back then, and then it ramped up after that. So I think we're still within the first several months of all the activity around this. You're talking about Riot's capacity, that being built out. The ability to utilize that capacity. I mean, really at any time. Of course, you don't really want to start building new buildings and then divert the power away from it. So the substation is the key part there. You have a substation that's in there and that's providing power. Then you can develop what you need from there, depending on what a customer's desires are. I'm sorry, requirements are. So I think we still have flexibility with that. There's the ability for something to potentially come together there. But it's still very early, and at the end of the day, we're looking for something that is not a huge capital requirement for us. That's one of the key elements that made that Core Scientific and CoreWeave deal so interesting. Is CoreWeave fronting the capital, offsetting future payments. We don't want to take on a huge capital expense, and we want a strong counterparty, and we want those economics to beat Bitcoin mining economics over the long term. So I think the power is the key asset. I think that's a big theme of what people talk about this year. So not only will we have these conversations, but we are continuing to diligently work to expand our portfolio power capacity to give ourselves that optionality.
Let's hope those Wall Street guys are listening into this, because they were all sort of earing up to ask you plenty of HPC questions back in Corsicana back in June, but we're stopped at the first question, I'm afraid.
Yeah, we may get the last laugh yet, Anthony.
Does Corsicana, now that you sort of changed the sort of like the thought process into maybe considering HPC, does it allow itself to potential HPC being sited at Corsicana? Have you got the necessary fibre? You have got the water there, obviously. We've seen a big swimming pool, and obviously you've got the power coming online, in 2025, 2026. So does it fit all the criteria for a potential, HPC client to come in there and be hosted at that site?
So what's great about the site is its location proximity to a major metropolitan. A lot of the sites people are looking at these days, they are farther away. Corsicana is an hour outside of Dallas, which is of course a major metropolitan. We do have the fiber there, of course. We have that retention pond. However, more water would be needed to facilitate an AI HPC client. Those cooling systems use more water than our immersion cooling systems do. We've actually gotten pretty water efficient with those over time, which is why that retention pond made a lot of sense for us. So that's the type of thing that we're solving for. There are some hurdles like this that we have to overcome to facilitate a large scale client, but we're working to do that, because if there's a good deal where we could increase the value of that capacity and get a great contract in there, we want to do everything we can to make that possible.
And would you say at the moment, in terms of conversations that you're having sort of significantly more conversations around potential HPC than you've had in the past, now that you're changing your potential strategy? I mean, Bitcoin prices at the moment 107, 108,000 today. There's got to be a tipping point when Bitcoin actually starts becoming the main conversation again, because HPC is more predictable based on a level, and we've seen that through the Core Scientific deal, and we'll probably see that through some of the miners who are about to announce their deals in in the sort of like very near future. But with Bitcoin price rallying, I seem to remember Sam said it would have to get to about 130,000 for the conversation to switch away for him from HPC. Well, we're not that far away now. What do you see in your view, over this sort of like next year, as we're in a sort of like starting, it looks like we're in a really, a bull cycle again, like we were 4 years ago. Do you keep your options really open? And have you been having sort of like, a potential conversations more often since your thought process changed?
Yeah, we have been in conversations with multiple parties now for a number of months. I can't share any detailed updates about how these conversations are going, but they're very credible counterparties, and that's important to us in doing a potential deal here, because you're talking about building capacity in one direction. We can't just turn around. This Bitcoin mining and AI HPC, it's not interchangeable. Some people may have designs where they think they can accomplish that. The way that we've built out Corsicana, at least the way those plans work with immersion, we cannot go back and forth. So if we're going to build capacity towards AI HPC, we want to be very sure that we're going to be getting revenue from that, from a very creditworthy counterparty for some time to come. Now your question about how we think about the economics relative to Bitcoin price, I think there's a bit more nuance there. It's not as simple as which one is higher because of the predictability of that cash flow. It's not subject to the volatility of Bitcoin, although Bitcoin has appreciated over a long time. Mining is competitive as well. You have the network difficulty working against you, and you have the halvings as well. So there's multiple components there. I think that having cash flow from a very respected hyperscale client would be, like I said, predictable, and I think that the market would value that accordingly. So it's not simply, hey, what's going to be better or worse than Bitcoin at this point in time? I think there's a lot more details that you have to look at, and we value that predictability as well. And by the way, I think that type of agreement augments our strategy very well, has the potential to augment our strategy, both the Bitcoin mining strategy, as that would be cash flow coming in that helps cover expenses there, and the Bitcoin treasury strategy as cash flow comes in to either service debt or potentially purchase Bitcoin as well. So all of these things work together, have the potential to work together rather, to support this strategy. So I think the theme at Riot is we have an open mind. We're exploring different possibilities. We want to do what we want to take the path that maximizes the value of that capacity.
I wanted to touch on Starboard Value. You mentioned HPC. They recently announced or disclosed an investment in Riot. They highlighted HPC opportunity as a potential avenue forward for Riot. So I understand it's sensitive. You're not able to share a lot of information. Is there anything you can comment on that situation right now?
Yeah, so I mean, we wouldn't want to comment. As a matter of policy, we wouldn't want to comment on detailed discussions with any shareholder. We value regular engagement with our shareholders. We want to be able to receive feedback and talk to them, and it wouldn't be right for us to be out there repeating everything they say. But I think from the Wall Street Journal article that came out, you can see their interest in Riot is around our power assets and potentially getting a type of AI HPC deal to maximize the value of those assets. But I think, as we've been talking about on this program, podcast, as we've talked about on this podcast, in previous episodes as well, we've been evaluating ways to see if there's a deal that we can go in there. I think what this says is, as the Wall Street Journal article noted, is, they see value in our power assets. And the fact that a large fund like that has taken an interest in Riot and is invested in Riot as a shareholder of Riot, I think that is a major milestone in how this industry has evolved and how Riot has evolved. We're always looking for support. We're actively trying to increase our institutional shareholder base all the time. And I think this is a matter of an investor recognizing the value of our power assets here. So we're working hard to maximize the value of those assets. We've already been talking about AI HPC, so I don't think I can add anything more else to there. But it's an exciting time to own power assets.
Hey, I'll throw another difficult one in at you while we're going here. We just saw in your Bitfarms dealings that you've had to actually disclose the percentage of the company that you own. So my understanding with the Starboard Value is they would actually have to disclose as they hit milestones as well, 5%, 10%, 20%. Is that correct, Jason?
the SEC requirements are an investor disclose a position once it gets over 5%. So Riot started disclosing its investment in Bitfarms once we crossed the 5%, and then there's Canadian rules. There's kind of another wrinkle to that. There's Canadian rules at 10%, where there's some additional changes as well. And so yeah, if you own more than 5% of a public company, it has to be disclosed in a timely manner.
Those Canadians. And on the topic of Bitfarms, again, a sensitive subject, but one that we've received a lot of questions from the subscribers about. Anything you can share in terms of details on your thinking, strategy, outlook with Bitfarms' position?
Yeah, so Riot remains a significant shareholder in Bitfarms. We entered that settlement agreement in September. They recently made some changes to the board. They completed their special meeting. They added a new director that board independently picked, and they're moving along their strategy. I would say we have a collaborative relationship with them, just like any other shareholder. We're following them closely.
It does feel like there's a fork in the road. Some companies are staying as Bitcoin miners, others are moving more to kind of high performance compute, where they say, hey, look, we're going to do Bitcoin mining, we might do some AI data center stuff, maybe there's other use cases. How have you guys evaluated kind of that fork in the road and describe kind of the strategy that you're taking?
So I would say the foundation to our strategy as a company has been to create optionality with having power assets. So developing sites that have interconnections to power at large scale. That optionality, obviously, as our core business, we have typically used for Bitcoin mining. I mean, we've only used for Bitcoin mining, I should say. But as you noted, there's demand for power from HPC AI data centers as well. So what we're starting to see is Bitcoin miners that are dabbling in that. Core Scientific signed a huge deal with CoreWeave earlier this year, and that has got a lot of investor interest around doing this. So we are open to monetizing that power for whatever is going to create the most value. And I do think there's a way that having an AI HPC strategy helps contribute and support the Bitcoin mining side of the business to what we were just talking about financing. If I had an AI HPC hosting segment or however it looked like, and we're getting predictable cash flow that the market would value because of its predictability over long term, and we can use that cash flow to fund operations or fund growth, that's amazing. I think the industry is in a wait and see approach right now to see if anyone else is going to be able to sign a good deal. Lots of miners are looking at it. We have been in discussions, and it's still early. I don't know what will happen, but we're open to doing things like this in order to maximize the value of the capacity that we have.